International Settlements, BIS, is the central bank of central banks, and a strong organization that oversees trillions of dollars in worldwide financial transactions. This bank has remained in the background for quite some time. But what happens when those who watch over the world's financial system become tainted with corruption? What happens when the same institution that is intended to safeguard us from financial instability and catastrophe is instead engaged in unlawful actions and cover-ups? What are the consequences of this situation? In the shadowed bank of international settlements BIS, we follow the narrative of retired investigator Jack and his partner Maria, as they investigate a robbery at the Bank of International Settlements BIS, and find a big conspiracy involving prominent individuals from all around the globe. The Bank of International Settlements, BIS, is a fictional intelligence agency. The theft of a peculiar item puts in action a series of events that leads Jack and Maria on an exciting adventure that is fraught with peril, mystery, and suspense. Jack and Maria learn, as they probe more into the Bank of International Settlements BIS, that the theft is not a unique occurrence and that there have been previous thefts using a similar mode of operation. This information comes to light as Jack and Maria continue their investigation. They quickly find out about a massive plot involving the Bank of International Settlements BIS, and its influential stakeholders, and at that point, they understand that they are in much over their heads. But Jack and Maria are resolute in their pursuit of the truth, and they are not going to let anything stand in their way. They are up against both time and formidable adversaries as they attempt to recover the stolen item and reveal the truth using the evidence that they collect, but they are certain that they will be successful. The suspenseful thriller The Shadowed Bank of International Settlements BIS peels back the layers to reveal the seedy underside of the international monetary system. It is a narrative of power, corruption, and treachery, but it is also a story of hope and redemption. This is the story. Even though Jack and Maria may be confronted with perils that are beyond their wildest imaginations along the road, they never lose sight of their objective, which is to unearth the truth and bring the conspirators to justice. Join Jack and Maria as they embark on their exciting journey as they negotiate the intricate and dark world of the Bank of International Settlements BIS and discover a major conspiracy that threatens the very foundations of the global financial system. Join Jack and Maria as they embark on their exciting journey. Chronology for the events in the book. In the prologue, a band of thieves with exceptional skills breaks into the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, in Switzerland and makes off with an unidentified item. They have no concept what they have done or who their boss is. They have no idea what they have stolen. The plot begins with the robbery at the Bank of International Settlements BIS, in which the criminals are able to successfully get into the bank and steal the item. This chapter takes place in the present day. Present day is covered in Chapter 2, The Investigator. A rich businessman has approached Jack, a former detective, and requested him to investigate the Bank of International Settlements BIS theft. Jack is at first hesitant to take on the case, but he is eventually convinced to do so when he is offered a significant quantity of money for his services. Soon after, he finds out that the theft is not a unique incident and that there have been other thefts using a method of operation that is quite similar to the one that had occurred. Jack and Maria, his partner, start looking into the BIS and the conspiracy that was behind the robbery in Chapter 3, The Research, which takes place in the present day. They make the shocking discovery that the Bank of International Settlements BIS has been engaged in unlawful operations and covering them up for a significant amount of time. In Chapter 4, The Conspiracy, which takes place in the present day, Jack and Maria learn of a massive plot that involves influential individuals from all around the globe. The thing that was taken from you is a key to a hidden vault, which has proof of the plot in it. One of the conspirators paid the thieves to take the key and destroy the evidence. This was done at the conspirators' direction. It's a race against time to retrieve the device that was stolen before it gets into the wrong hands. In Chapter 5, The Chase, which takes place in the present day. Jack and Maria are being trailed through the streets of Geneva by assassins who have been paid for the job. They ultimately succeed in outsmarting those who are pursuing them and discovering the hidden vault. The revelation in the present day is discussed in Chapter 6. Jack and Maria will utilize the papers, tapes, and other proof of the plot that is stored in the vault to prove that they are telling the truth. The individuals responsible for the conspiracy are brought to jail, and the public reacts with horror to the news that the BIS engaged in unlawful activity. The consequences, in the present day, is discussed in Chapter 7. Jack and Maria look back on their journey and discuss the profound effect it has had on both of their lives as the dust begins to settle. They are aware that the truth is a potent weapon, but it does not come without a price. They are also aware of the fact that there are always going to be new theories to debunk and more experiences to have. The last few pages of the book provide a tantalizing glimpse of an upcoming mystery. As a whole, the Shadowed Bank of International Settlements BIS takes place over a very short length of time, most likely spanning anything from a few weeks to a month, as Jack and Maria race against the clock to discover the truth behind the Bank of International Settlements BIS plot. Chapter 1: The Robbery. The first event of the novel is an exciting robbery that takes place at the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, in Switzerland. A band of very experienced thieves is able to gain entry to the bank and make off with a cryptic item. The heist goes off without a hitch, but the criminals have no clue what they stole or who hired them in the first place. One of the financial institutions with the highest level of safety was the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. It was the central bank for central banks and had its headquarters in Basel, Switzerland. It served approximately 60 different nations with its financial services. It was well known that the bank had cutting-edge security measures, which made it very difficult, if not impossible, to get into the building. But the thieves had pulled off their heist in some mysterious way. The theft had been painstakingly planned, and the thieves had used cutting-edge technology to circumvent the bank's security systems in order to get away with it. They were able to enter the building without being discovered and then make their way to the vault where the item was being kept. Even though it was only a plain, unremarkable box, the thieves had been given strict orders to get their hands on it at whatever cost. The theft was completed without a hitch, and the perpetrators were able to flee the scene without being discovered. But as they made their way to the vehicle they planned to use to drive away, they couldn't help but speculate about what it was that they had just taken. Even though it was a very plain and unobtrusive box, it had been guarded as if it were the most priceless item in the whole world. As the bank robbers fled the scene in their getaway vehicle, their minds wandered to the identity of their shadowy boss. Who had paid them to take the package from the warehouse? And what was the reason for its significance? They had been paid a substantial amount of money for the task, but the money no longer had any significance for them. They cared more about the thing that they had taken than anything else. They had no idea that their boss was not the only one interested in the thing they were working with. The investigation into the theft was being conducted by a former detective by the name of Jack, who was hired by a rich businessman. Jack had a reputation for being the greatest in the industry, and his customers understood that if anybody could solve the case, it was he. They hired him because they knew he could. Jack was unable to help but be amazed by the criminals' abilities as he watched the surveillance tape of the theft they had committed. They had accomplished their goal of easily evading the bank's security measures, and their activities had been meticulously planned out. However, as he continued to view the tape, he became aware of an odd detail. The thieves didn't seem to be in a rush to get away with their loot. In point of fact, it seemed as if they were rather afraid to leave the bank. Jack's curiosity was sparked by this, so he started doing some further research on the topic. Soon after, he made the startling realization that the robbery was not a unique occurrence. Other robberies had been committed using a method that was functionally identical to this one, and each one had taken place at a bank that was affiliated with the Bank of International Settlements, BIS. Jack realized that he had stumbled across a significant lead, and he immediately proceeded to investigate the Bank of International Settlements BIS's operations in further detail. He unearthed a labyrinth of lies, corruption, and intrigue as a result of his investigation. The bank was complicit in a wide variety of unlawful acts, ranging from the laundering of money to the trafficking of weaponry. It was a murky realm that only a select few individuals were aware of, but Jack was determined to bring it into the light. He had no idea that there were other people looking into the Bank of International Settlements BIS at the same time as him. For a number of months, a young journalist by the name of Maria had been investigating the murky operations of the bank. She had unearthed proof of illegitimate investments, hidden accounts in offshore jurisdictions, and dubious dealings. Her inquiry had brought her to the Bank of International Settlements, BIS, and once she got there, she realized that there was more to the bank than first seemed to be the case. As Jack and Maria started to discuss their findings with one another, they were aware that they were also looking into the same topic. They came to the conclusion that working together would be the best way to discover the truth. They had no idea that their inquiry would lead them down a perilous route that would eventually bring them to a big conspiracy that included powerful individuals from all around the globe. The second chapter, The Investigator. Our protagonist, Jack, is a former police officer who has just retired when he receives a request from a rich businessman to investigate a theft at Bank of International Settlements BIS. Jack is at first hesitant to take on the case, but he is eventually convinced to do so when he is offered a significant quantity of money for his services. Soon after, He learns that the thievery is not an isolated incident and that there have been additional thefts with a method of operation that is quite similar to the one that occurred. When Jack first starts looking into the Bank of International Settlements BIS, he is shocked to discover how secretive the bank is about its operations. The Bank of International Settlements BIS functions independently from the rest of the globe and follows its own set of laws and guidelines. It is a murky world, of which only a select few are aware, and of which even fewer have any comprehension. Jack begins his investigation by conducting interviews with the staff members of the bank who were working the night of the robbery. He finds out that the thieves were quite adept, as shown by the fact that they were easily able to avoid detection by the bank's security systems. Jack has a sneaking suspicion that the workers are trying to conceal something, despite the fact that they are unable to supply any information that may be helpful. After that, Jack shifts his focus to the safety measures that have been put into place at the bank. After analyzing the video from the surveillance cameras, he came to the conclusion that the thieves had circumvented the protection measures by using cutting-edge technology. He comes to the conclusion that the theft had been well organized and that the perpetrators had not left any traces of their activities behind. Jack is determined to keep fighting in spite of this setback. As he continues his investigation into the Bank of International Settlements BIS's operations, he quickly learns that the bank is complicit in a wide variety of unlawful endeavors, ranging from the laundering of illicit funds to the smuggling of lethal weapons. He also finds out that the bank is guarded by strong elites who would do all in their power to preserve its privacy and keep its secrets secure. Jack comes to the conclusion that he needs assistance as he continues his inquiry. He tries to get in touch with Sarah, his former partner who is now working in a high-ranking position in the FBI. Sarah at first treats Jack's assertions with skepticism, but she eventually comes to the conclusion that he is onto something very significant. Together, they make headway in disentangling the complex web of lies that has encircled the Bank of International Settlements BIS as well as all of the present puppet masters. As Jack and Sarah continue their investigation, they find themselves in more perilous circumstances. They are pursued, intimidated, and even assaulted in certain instances. They, on the other hand, refuse to back down. They are resolute in their mission to uncover the whole truth and bring those responsible to account. Their inquiry leads them all over the globe, from the imposing halls of power in Washington, D.C., to the narrow alleyways of Hong Kong. Along the way, they come across an interesting cast of shady characters, such as a skilled hacker, a renegade CIA operative, and a shadowy informant. Jack and Sarah are beginning to understand that the robbery was just the tip of the iceberg as they approach closer and closer to the truth. Together with the BlackRock Corporation, the Bank of International Settlements BIS is a participant in a massive conspiracy that has the potential to continue to destabilize the foundations of the world economy. They have a short window of opportunity to put a stop to the shady dealings of the bank and avert a catastrophe of unprecedented proportions in the world of finance. Chapter 3: The Research. Jack and Sarah are becoming more aware that they need inside knowledge in order to make any headway in their investigation of the Bank of International Settlements BIS. They need the assistance of an individual who is familiar with the inner workings of the bank and is prepared to provide that knowledge to them. Enter the informant, a shadowy character who makes contact with Jack and makes an offer of assistance. The source claims to have worked for the Bank of International Settlements BIS in the past and is in possession of first-hand information on the functioning of the bank. Both Jack and Sarah had a healthy dose of skepticism initially. They are hesitant to put their faith in someone they have never met, but they are aware that in order to solve the mystery, they will need to take some chances. They make plans to meet the informant in a back alley in the center of Geneva, which is completely vacant. Jack and Sarah can't help but feel anxious as they wait for the informant to arrive at their location. They are unaware of what to anticipate, and they are aware that the informant may be luring them into a trap. At long last, the source of the information shows up. He is an elongated guy with a lean build who is dressed in a long coat and a hat. His voice is husky and gravelly, and the shadows are casting a shadow across his face. The informant reveals to Jack and Sarah that he worked for the Bank of International Settlements BIS for a considerable amount of time before leaving the organization due to his disappointment in its operations. He reveals to them that the bank is engaged in a wide variety of unlawful operations, ranging from the laundering of money to the smuggling of weapons. Jack and Sarah are also informed by the source that the bank has a hidden vault located far below. He claims that the records in this vault have the potential to bring the bank to its knees and expose the bank's illegal operations to the rest of the world. Both Jack and Sarah are wary, but the information provided by the source has piqued both of their interests. They are aware of the possibility that the informant is telling lies or that he is really working for the bank. They have come to the conclusion that more investigation is required before taking any action. Jack and Sarah spend the following several days gathering further information on the source of the information. They make the discovery that he is, in fact, a formerly employed individual at the Bank of International Settlements BIS and that he was fired for blowing the whistle. They also discover that the informant has been living in secret for a number of years out of fear of reprisal from the bank. In the end, Jack and Sarah make the decision to act on the information provided by the informant. They had devised a daring plot to break into the Bank of International Settlements BIS vault in the hopes of finding the proof that would allow them to bring the bank to its knees for good. Jack and Sarah are both overcome with apprehension as they make their way further into the bank. The depths of the bank are unknown territory for them. They are well aware that they are gambling a significant amount of money, but they believe that this is the only way to find out the truth. They eventually make it to the vault, and with the help of the information supplied by the informant, they are able to circumvent the security systems and access the vault. The contents of the room take them completely by surprise. The safe deposit box protects papers and data that shed light on the bank's complicity in a wide-ranging illegal operation. They are in possession of the evidence required to pursue legal action against the bank. While Jack and Sarah are making their way out of the vault, they can hear the sound of alarms blaring throughout the rest of the bank. They are aware that they need to make rapid progress if they want to successfully flee the bank prior to the arrival of the security staff. They successfully escape the bank without being discovered, still in possession of the proof that would bring about the downfall of one of the most powerful organizations in the world. However, the benefits of their triumph won't last long. As soon as they go outdoors into the crisp air of Switzerland, armed men immediately surround them. They are immediately subdued and brought into prison after the struggle. Jack and Sarah are aware that they are being escorted away in handcuffs, but they are certain that they have acted appropriately. They have not been afraid to uncover the truth and bring the criminals to justice, even if it means giving up their own freedom in the process. They have no choice but to have faith that their efforts will not go to waste and that the world will be a better place as a result of their sacrifices. Chapter 4. The Conspiracy. Jack and Maria are now perusing the papers that they were able to acquire from the Bank of International Settlements BIS vault while they sit in a dimly lit café in the center of Geneva. When they opened it up, they couldn't believe what they saw inside. The bank had been complicit in a wide variety of illegal acts, ranging from the laundering of money to the trafficking of weaponry. However, the scope of the operation was far more unsettling than I had anticipated. The Bank of International Settlements BIS was just a minor part of a far larger criminal plot that covered the whole world. As Jack and Maria investigated more into the matter, they uncovered the fact that the conspiracy had been going on for decades and that influential people from all around the globe were participating. They had been successful in keeping their operations secret from the scrutiny of the general public, utilizing their vast money and power to stifle anybody who posed a risk of exposing them. The piece of property that was taken from the Bank of International Settlements BIS was the key to a hidden vault where the conspirators had stashed evidence that might be used against them. The thieves had been paid by one of the conspirators to take the key and destroy the evidence, but they had been betrayed and ended up with nothing after being tricked out of their reward. Jack and Maria were well aware of the urgency with which they were required to take action in order to prevent the conspirators from hiding their tracks. They reached out to a few reliable pals and started putting together a strategy at the same time. Their first step was to acquire further pieces of evidence. They were aware that in order to have any hope of bringing those responsible for the conspiracy to justice, they needed to construct a case that was as solid as possible. They were able to acquire access to secret information and data by using their connections, and they were even successful in bugging the phones of many crucial participants. As they proceeded with their investigation, they found that the conspiracy was considerably more widespread than they had first believed it to be. It included representatives of the intelligence community as well as politicians and corporate executives at the highest levels. The conspirators were involved in a wide variety of illicit enterprises, ranging from drug trafficking to people smuggling, and as a result of their involvement, they had earned a wealth. Jack and Maria were aware that they needed to exercise caution at all times. The conspirators were formidable and vicious, and in order to safeguard their own interests, they were willing to resort to any means necessary. They were very suspicious of who they might put their faith in and continually cast their gaze behind them. Their breakthrough came when they unearthed a plot by the conspirators to begin a big operation that would cement their dominance and influence over the global economy. This was the moment when they realized they were on the right track. They had come up with a whole new financial system that would allow them to go beyond the rules that were already in place and establish a new global order. Jack and Maria were aware that they needed to move quickly. They rallied their comrades and carried off a daring attack on the top-secret vault, entering using the key that had been taken earlier. They were able to find the evidence that they needed to bring the conspirators to justice, and they moved rapidly to spread it to the press as well as law enforcement organizations all around the globe. The consequences of their acts were quite severe. The conspirators were uncovered and brought to court, and the world's financial system was overhauled to ensure that abuses of this kind would never occur again. Jack and Maria were hailed as heroes after their valorous actions and unwavering commitment to righting an injustice. But Jack and Maria were conflicted about the outcome of the triumph. They knew there were many more out there who were still working in the shadows because they had seen the seedy underbelly of the global power structure for themselves and had experienced it for themselves. They swore to go on with their task, which included uncovering the truth and exposing any and all forms of corruption, regardless of the consequences. The Chase, which is Chapter 5. Jack and Maria were aware that there was a limited amount of time left. It was imperative that they recover the missing item before it may end up in the wrong hands. They had been cautioned that there were influential individuals who were prepared to do whatever it took to get their hands on it, and they had no doubt that these people would resort to whatever means necessary in order to accomplish their objectives. They were aware that their pursuers were watching them as they moved through the streets of Geneva, and they did their best to stay out of sight. They had been successful in evading them up to this point, but they were well aware that it was only a matter of time before they would be discovered. The pursuit was ferocious due to the fact that hired assassins were hard on their trail. They had no choice but to keep moving at all times, using all of their knowledge and experience in order to remain one step ahead of those who were chasing after them. They used every evasion technique in the book, such as climbing walls, jumping fences, and dodging through alleyways, in order to remain alive. Killers had been recruited, and they were relentless, but Jack and Maria were determined to keep one step ahead of them. They eventually were able to outsmart those who were pursuing them and found themselves outside of the hidden vault. They were aware that the item they were searching for was somewhere inside, so they had to go quickly in order to acquire it before their pursuers caught up to them. They moved rapidly to enter the vault, and what they saw once they were inside made them lose their breath. The safe housed stacks upon stacks of gold bars, diamonds, and several other varieties of priceless stones. However, in the middle of the room there was a box that was just marginally bigger than a shoebox. It turned out to be the item that they had been looking for. The box was promptly grabbed by Jack and Maria, and they were soon on their way back to the street. They were able to hear the noises of their pursuers approaching closer, but they were aware that they needed to continue moving forward. They hurried through the streets, evading vehicles and people as they made their way to their goal, which they eventually reached. They gave the box to their boss, a rich businessman who had engaged them to recover the item. The boss had paid them to retrieve the item. Even though they had completed their task, Jack and Maria were aware that they could not relax just yet. They were aware that there were still a lot of threats in the world since they had seen the extent that powerful individuals were ready to go to in order to keep their secrets safe, and they had seen this firsthand. But for the time being, all they could think of was how pleased they were to have finished their task and to have averted a potentially disastrous tragedy. They were able to relax for the first time in a long time, content in the knowledge that they had contributed to making the world a safer place. The revelation is covered in Chapter 6. Jack and Maria had been successful in recovering the thieved item, and in the process, they had unearthed the massive conspiracy that had been behind the theft. They were conscious of the fact that they were unable to keep this knowledge to themselves. They were required to make use of the evidence that they had amassed in order to reveal the truth to the general public. They had recovered a box from the hidden vault, and inside of it was a plethora of material, including papers, recordings, and other pieces of evidence related to the plot. Jack and Maria devoted several hours to carefully go over the contents of the book in order to solve the mystery and learn the truth. It is believed that influential individuals from all over the globe, including politicians, businesses, and even members of the intelligence establishment, were engaged in the plot. They had been using the Bank of International Settlements BIS to disguise their tracks, launder money, and fund illicit operations. Jack and Maria were aware that they needed to move quickly. They got in touch with the relevant authorities and handed over their evidence, doing so in the hopes that it would be sufficient to bring the conspirators to justice. The news really rocked the whole globe. However, the evidence demonstrated that the Bank of International Settlements BIS had been engaged in criminal actions for many years, despite the fact that it had traditionally been seen as a neutral organization. The incident sent shockwaves across the global financial system, and as a result, many individuals lost trust in the global banking system. The conspirators were brought to justice, and the majority of them were given significant jail terms for their roles in the plot. The Bank of International Settlements BIS went through a significant amount of reform, and brand new laws were instituted, both with the intention of preventing abuses of a similar kind in the future. Jack and Maria were lauded as heroes for their courageous actions and unwavering commitment to uncovering the truth. They were aware, however, that they had only scraped the surface of the criminal activity and corruption that existed in the globe, and that there were still a great many threats lurking in the shadows. However, for the time being, they could relax in the knowledge that they had contributed to a positive change. They had successfully dismantled a major conspiracy and contributed to the financial system's return to a degree of fairness and integrity that had been compromised. They were well aware that there was always going to be more work to be done, but for the time being, they were satisfied in the knowledge that they had contributed what they could to make the world a better place. The aftermath is discussed in Chapter 7. Jack and Maria went through a difficult period in the immediate wake of the Bank of International Settlements BIS robbery. They had unearthed a massive conspiracy and helped bring the conspirators to justice, but the impact from their acts had been enormous. Although they had uncovered a vast conspiracy, the fallout from their actions had been enormous. Jack's experience with the case may be described as having elements of both ease and difficulty. He had always been motivated by a desire to learn the truth, but this investigation had challenged his determination to a degree that had never been seen before. In the end, he prevailed despite the fact that he had to contend with danger, treachery, and a great number of other challenges along the road. On the other hand, Maria was still struggling to cope with the mental and emotional toll that the case had had on her. She had no idea that she would get embroiled in a plot that was both so perilous and so intricate, and the ordeal had left a lasting impression on her. During the course of their journey, she had developed a deep relationship with Jack, and she was aware that she would be forever thankful to him for his direction and support. Jack and Maria were reminded by their experience that the world was, despite everything they had been through, an unsafe place to be. There were always going to be more conspiracies to debunk, more riddles to unravel, and more perils to overcome. They were aware, however, that not only did they possess the necessary abilities, but also the will to overcome any obstacles that may have been placed in their path. The last few pages of the book provide a few hints about an upcoming investigation. Jack and Maria are well aware that their job is never over, and as a result, they are prepared for anything that may lie ahead. They are aware that they are about to embark on a never-ending new journey, during which they will be exposed to peril, intrigue, and excitement. Nevertheless, they are also aware that they will never give up the struggle for justice and the truth. Chapter 8 Final Move. Jack was enjoying a bottle of red wine while relaxing on his balcony and taking in the breathtaking panorama of Geneva below him. It had been many weeks since he and Maria had uncovered the plot at the Bank of International Settlements BIS, and since then, life had returned to a pattern that resembled something closer to normal. A few weeks earlier, he had received word from Maria that she was working on a new case, one that she had intimated may be even more significant than the one she had just finished. Jack couldn't help but grin to himself despite a little pang of resentment that he wasn't a part of it. But he was pleased for Maria, and he was certain that she would do the duties admirably. Regarding himself, he had made the decision to step away from the investigative job for a short period. After the emotional and physical toll that the Bank of International Settlements BIS investigation had had on him, he needed some downtime to regain his strength. Aside from that, he was having much too much fun in retirement to consider going back to work just yet. Jack's relationship with his daughter, Sarah, had been strained as a result of the events that occurred at the Bank of International Settlements BIS. When she discovered that he had taken on such a risky assignment, she had been incensed, and ever since then, they had not spoken with one another. He made a couple attempts to get in touch with her, but she was emphatic about not wanting to meet him. Despite his efforts, she refused to see him. Jack took another swallow of wine before heaving another sigh. Even though he was missing Sarah, he realized that he had to give her some space. He held out hope that she would one day see the reasoning behind his actions and forgive him. At that same moment, he heard a notification sound on his phone. It was from Maria, and the subject line of the email read, "New case, big trouble." Jack stifled a grin to himself, well aware that they seemed to attract problems no matter where they went. He opened the email and started reading it, experiencing a rush of exhilaration that he had had before. It's possible that retirement might be put off for a little while longer.